Greetings, everyone. Hello, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're joining. My name is Prithvi Raj, and I'm glad to be joining DevOps Summit 2021 Canada. It's a pleasure, and thanks everyone, the organizers, the joinees, for joining here. And I'm glad to be joining in to talk about today's topic from my end, and that is evolution of Kubernetes native chaos engineering, how you can achieve resiliency with chaos engineering and Litmus Chaos 2.0. So moving on, before we talk about the agenda, a little bit about myself. As I said, my name is Prithvi Raj. I work as a community lead for the Litmus Kiosk project. Which all of this started off 1.5 years ago at Maya Data, where we joined in and which was the original sponsor of the project. But then the project grew so much that eventually it became a company, and I'm now part of the Chaos Native team, which is one of the main sponsors of Litmus. And I also organize various events. Was one of the co-organizers of Chaos Carnival, a global conference for chaos engineering, and then was part of the Kubernetes Community Days organizing team. And lastly, the Kubernetes Chaos Engineering meetups, which we organize every last Saturdays of the month. These are my socials, so you can always connect with me whenever you want. Post the talk, and I look forward to having questions and connecting with you. So moving on to the agenda, we'll be talking about chaos. Of course, we'll be introducing chaos. We'll be talking about what is Litmus, why do you exactly need chaos engineering, what are the resiliency aspects which brought chaos engineering into play, the journey of Litmus, what are the advantages and what are the core components, and finally we'll be talking about the roadmap and how you can be contributing to the project. So let's get started. What brought in the idea of chaos, or what exactly brought in this technology, which we know, especially as chaos engineering today, is resilience. So, what exactly is resilience? Resilience in the Kubernetes paradigm. It's nothing but the ability of your system to withstand, to stay afloat, even if an outage or a fault happens, even if, yeah, let's say something goes down. If your system is able to withstand that, then you call your systems resilient. So let's take some examples of resiliencies and weaknesses in your systems in the Kubernetes world. So I'll take three examples: a pod level, a node level, and a memory leak or a container level. So pod is evicted from a node. If a pod is rescheduled and the dependent service is healthy, then of course your systems are still resilient, the pod is still resilient. But let's say the dependent service slows down and turns out to be unhealthy. What happens exactly? That is an example of a weakness. And similarly, if you take the example of a node going on to a not ready state, or a memory leak in a container, all these are examples of possible outages that can happen in your system, or happen day in and day out, with Kubernetes being so dynamic and people shifting to Kubernetes vastly in the past few years or the past few months. The growth of Kubernetes adoption has grown exponentially, and that is where, with the dynamic world, with so many applications coming in, we'll talk about that later on, has made such outages possible. And if the dependent service, it turns out to be healthy, then only you can call your systems resilient. But how do you find out that the systems are resilient, or how do you maintain that resiliency? That is what brought the idea of chaos engineering. And chaos engineering is not new. I mean, since the days of Netflix, when Netflix came in with Chaos Monkey 8 years ago, and the idea was all about running chaos tests in production, running resiliency tests in production. It was all about preventing such downtimes, which have caused billions of, which have caused companies to lose millions and billions of dollars. I mean, take an example of the recent outages that happened with Slack or Facebook, or I mean, MailChimp, or so many companies, from Apple to Facebook to even the airline sector in Airlines, have lost millions in terms of revenue when such sort of outages have happened. I mean, the time of course matters, but even a second of an outage can lead to loss of a lot of money for these folks. And every sector, from the banking to the e-commerce to every other sector, is in requirement of catering to these downtimes, because downtimes are times during which production is stopped. Your production system goes down and every setup requires some time for repairs. But just in case you have the test suite in place, you have those resiliency goals in place, then of course these downtimes can be avoided, or these outages, at least the preparation for the outage can be possible. And that is what helped folks coin the term chaos engineering. What exactly is chaos engineering? Let us understand. Chaos engineering is nothing but, in layman terms, is introducing a fault deliberately into the system. And it's the process of identifying the weaknesses in a system through controlled experimentation, or through introducing a chaotic behavior or a random and an unpredictable behavior in the system, which can happen in a real world scenario, and continuously test the system with these chaos tests to identify the resiliency points and the weakness points of the system. That is what chaos is. Or it's basically, let's say, for example, in a Kubernetes world, inducing a fault on an unexpected disruption, something like a network attack or a pod delete experiment. That I'm just taking example of a chaos experiment which happens in the Kubernetes paradigm. Let's say a pod gets deleted. So what happens? What will happen in the system? How will the infrastructure behave to it? All this, finding out all these findings, and this continuous way of testing in production was basically something you go know as chaos engineering. So moving on, why chaos engineering? I mean, this is an example of Kubernetes application in form of a pyramid. So there is your application which is on top, but then there are other applications alongside that. There's your MongoDB or your databases, Kafka application, TIKB, Vitess. These are examples of some cloud native projects. As being part of the cloud native foundation, I think that's the best to see, or we are moving into the cloud native world. So what is important is to understand that post your application, there are other layers too. I mean, there are cloud native services, Kubernetes services, platform services, and resiliency of your application doesn't just depend on one service. It depends on each and every layer. So that is what it's important, because systems are complex today. I mean, every system is so complex that it's difficult for you to understand where doesn't a possible outage or a fault happen in these application layers, or in these layers of your application. So that is where chaos engineering came into play, to test each and every layer, to test each and every application, and find out how you can make your system resilient. So too many applications, of course, can affect the resiliency of your systems, as these are changing. This is a dynamic world, and chaos engineering basically helps you to constantly validate the resiliency of your entire system. So obviously, as you can see, in the DevOps space, where does chaos engineering come? I mean, there are so many testing suites that are already out there. You have dev tests, you have integration testing, you have unit testing, E2E tests. But however, chaos testing is different than them, where these tests lie on the dev side. Chaos engineering lies on the ops side, where you test repeatedly, and you deploy, you operate, and you monitor them. Observability, as I talk about it later on, observability is key. You need to monitor where your systems are going down. And according to me, believing in the chaos first principle is very important. What is the chaos first principle? Why to wait for your systems to go down? I mean, chaos engineering is nothing but breaking things on purpose, as people define it. But according to me, chaos engineering is something that you break things on purpose to basically make your systems resilient. That's the overall definition of it. So test, don't wait, believe in the chaos first principle, and start now. I mean, there are a lot of cultural ideas that don't allow enterprises or individuals to adopt chaos. For example, the roadmap is not in place, or people are not ready to induce chaos, or the infrastructure is not ready. The shift has not been made from monolithic to microservices. But the personal belief is that all these roadblocks come into play. But I mean, you can induce chaos even in physical devices, as I know and as I speak. And other than that, the cultural shift needs to take place. The deployment, the ideas should come into the roadmap, and slowly, before moving into production, I think people have this idea that chaos can only be run in production. Obviously, the eventual goal is to run into production, but the idea is of inducing chaos at each stage of your development, from staging to pre-staging to a CI/CD to a pre-prod, and then into production. So that is what helps you adopt chaos slowly into your business units. So what are the four simple steps in which you practice chaos? We'll move on to the principles of chaos. These four principles, or these major principles, help you induce chaos in your system. So the first step, of course, is identifying the steady state of your system. How does your system behave when it's normal or it's in a steady state? And what are the possible outages that can happen? You hypothesize around it. That's the second step, where you understand the real world scenarios. What are the software failures, hardware failures, or malfunctions, or what exactly can go down, and you create a hypothesis around it, and then you run your experiment. So let's move on to the principles of chaos engineering. It's an open source document which was created back in 2019. It talks about what chaos engineering is and what are the advanced principles, how do you identify weaknesses, and how chaos engineering is practiced. Of course, as I mentioned, start by defining steady state. It's obviously a measurable output of your system that indicates a normal behavior, and then you build a hypothesis around the steady state behavior. You focus on the measurable output, and in the interval attributes, what's the overall throughput of your system, what is the latency, the percentiles, and these metrics help you understand the steady state of your system. How does your system behave when it's normal, and how it might behave when chaos induced. And real world events are happening every day. Malfunctions are happening every day. There's a potential variable in every chaos experiment. So you vary your real world events, and then you start run experiment. You experiment. There's scaling, which is important. Before I took the examples, one example we can take from India or from the world is the amount of scalability that we require in today's world. A new movie or a new series with the pandemic world changing, and with the pandemic coming in, people are too dependent on these OTT platforms or these platforms to watch movies, or a particular show. And that is where, suddenly, if just an example, suddenly there's, a spike in the number of users, or a spike in the number of traffic, and that might lead to a network related outage or a latency related outage. That is where practicing chaos and repeated testing has helped scale systems, understand the traffic patterns, understand the spike in the number of users, and then running these experiments continuously in an automated form. Obviously, manual labor, it's running experiments or testing is obviously labor intensive and becomes unsustainable in the future. So chaos engineering in an automated form obviously helps you gain confidence. The system gains confidence, and the more you analyze and orchestrate chaos in a controlled way, you minimize your blast radius eventually, because chaos engineering potentially has the ability to cause unnecessary pain as well, if not practiced in a controlled way, or if not practiced carefully. So the idea is to experiment and then minimize the blast radius, follow the principles of chaos, and fix your systems accordingly. So moving back to the presentation, you got to check the principles of chaos, that which gives you an overall idea of how chaos engineering is run. So how do you build the resilience of your systems? So first things first, you identify the steady state. Next, you introduce a fault, for example, a pod delete, a pod CPU hog, a pod memory hog. If the steady state conditions are regained, then of course your systems are resilient. But let's say if your steady state conditions are not regained, then you introduce a new fault. But in case of a resiliency, obviously you inject a new fault, and this loop continues. This is a workflow which keeps on going on. Keeps going on, and you keep continuously test your systems. And obviously, if no, there's a weakness found, then you fix it, you introduce a fault, and this is the workflow, the work chart which we build, and which basically talks about how chaos engineering is practiced in production. So how is it done typically? What are the typical methods that are being used, and how we need to change? Game days, of course, the most essential part of chaos. A company or an enterprise or a group of folks run specific chaos experiments according to their application. They run experiments which are specific to their requirement, and then the ideations are taken down. What are the findings? The ideations, they are put into place, and these findings are noted down in a working paper or a white paper. And that is what helps you understand your systems more, how chaos can help your systems, or how does chaos exactly behave in your systems, and what are the findings, how you can improve your systems, and how you can start bringing in chaos to your applications. So if you talk about the three applications that we have been using to run game days. One is the sock shop application. It's a socks application, e-commerce application, which helps you run chaos. And I think a lot of you know about the sock shop application as well, where you can eventually have basically place your observability goals in it and observe your systems going down and your, taking out the metrics through Prometheus, and then observe them in a Grafana dashboard, or the Datadog, or whichever dashboard you're using. And it's rarely integrated into the CI or the CD of the system. I mean, I talked about using chaos everywhere, but still folks are more focused on the production side of things and not the CI/CD side of things. Make no mistake, faults can happen everywhere. So this practice not coming into the CI/CD pipelines or the CI/CD of your system is something which kind of irks me at times, and I believe that this practice should change. But as of now, there's still rarity in integrating chaos into your systems, and only the SREs practice. I mean, since being part of the community since the last 1.5 years, you've seen that chaos is shifting to the developer persona as well. Every developer who's developing something is trying to induce some sort of chaos to test their systems or make his development a bit more resilient. But as of now, chaos engineering mostly is a practice which is more part of the DevOps practitioners, the performance engineers, and the SREs who are inducing chaos or making it part of their SLOs, SLIs, and SLA goals. Lastly, I mean, next up, manual planning and execution, which is already there, but the eventual goal, as I mentioned, is automating your chaos. So manual planning and execution helps in changing the culture, which is already out there, but automating them through such planning and execution should be the eventual goal, so that you don't have to worry a lot about the framework or the tool set. You rather, I mean, or putting in a lot of planning and a lot of labor, but rather you need to focus more on the test suite, how you need to produce your chaos, what are the findings. I think that can be helpful during a chaos engineering practice. And observability, obviously, it's not a commodity. It's each and every enterprise needs it. Everyone needs to know where are the systems going down, what are the metrics that are important, the logs, the events that are happening, how is the chaos being induced. And I think observability is key. I mean, the idea is obviously to use these metrics for the findings, eventually for developing the resiliency or the reliability goals, and also observe or monitor where the systems and how are the system behavior, because it also helps you understand the steady state, or the, as I say, I mean, the eventual goal is to find the unknown unknowns, right? There are known unknowns, and then there are known knowns, and there are unknown knowns and unknown unknowns, which unknown unknowns is the eventual goal of chaos engineering. You need to find out what is not known to you, and observability comes out to be a key there. And obviously there's a custom measurement process to manage all these results and increase the reliability. But I think, I mean, through the custom measurement process, I think the dynamic measurement processes that are coming in and changing this sort of behavior is basically, that is the reason why I talked about how it's done typically, and why there is a need of focusing more on chaos engineering or bringing it as a practice for each and every enterprise. So with this, we'll be introducing Litmus to you. Litmus is an open source cloud native chaos engineering framework, the cross cloud support. Of course, it's a CNCF sandbox project. Joined the CNCF sandbox last year in June. And its mission initially, of course, was to help just Kubernetes SREs and developers to identify weaknesses. But with the shift in the paradigm, or with the understanding of the overall community, the idea is chaos can be induced anywhere. Chaos can be induced in your Kubernetes systems. It can be induced in your application level, Azure, GCP. There are so many ways in which chaos can be used, and that is why the shift of Litmus came there, where the focus also became of catering to chaos experiments or inducing chaos in your systems for non-Kubernetes as well as Kubernetes native applications or systems. And moving on, I mean, this is the project status. It's already, I mean, has 1,000+ community of Slack members and 220,000 installations, approximately 2 million plus Docker pulls, and 500,000 plus experiment runs already, with a pool of 50 plus experiments. So that has been the growth of the project, and you are obviously welcome to contribute to the project. It's an open source project, so I'll be talking about contribution later on. But as we talk about how did Litmus evolve, or what was were the findings from the community that helped us understand that, this project needs to evolve, and what are the major, aspects that are necessary being part of the Kubernetes space or being part of the cloud native space. What all can be improved and what can be brought with 2.0, a version that was released 1.5 months ago. Those were the findings that were developed into 2.0 from 1.x. But let's talk about how these resiliency goals were developed. So first things first, where you can in DevOps, you can use Litmus. You can use Litmus anywhere in your dev CI pipelines, to your long running tests, in your staging platform, pre-prod or production. You have the opportunity to run chaos everywhere, from the starting of your developmental ideas to bringing into production. And there are folks out there who have shared community stories, who have shared a lot of ideas, and that is what has helped this community grow, or has helped the project go. And that is where we talk about the journey of Litmus. So first things first, it was made open source with the Apache license too, and it's now part of the CNCF community. And then a chaos hub was created. It's a marketplace. So it just helped you, identify where exactly your experiments are there, and what are the experiments that you can pull in. So as you can see, the Kubernetes level generic experiments, and what is the most used experiment, or there was a question which was asked that which experiment is mostly run in the Kubernetes suite. As you can see my screen, the pod delete, of course, it has more than 212,000 runs. And the pod delete or the pod CPU hog, the generic Kubernetes experiments have seen a lot of traction in the community. And I think that is what tells you how people are shifting to the Kubernetes space and why chaos is important. So this chaos hub is basically something which helps you pull in the experiments. So you've got OpenABS, GCP, VMware, AWS, Azure, Cassandra, and Kafka, and more to come up, Redis based. I think what is important for the community is to test everywhere. So the next goal is to obviously have chaos experiments for bare metal, for I think application specific MongoDB chaos, Redis chaos. That is the idea. And when you start using Litmus, when you put up the chaos center, which is the UI basically. So this is the private, the public chaos hub, which is available to you, where you can pull in the readily available experiments that are out there. But Litmus also provides you with an SDK, which helps you create your own experiments. So you run your experiments using Litmus itself, but what you do is through the SDK, you write your own experiments using the Python, Go, or Ansible SDK, and you induce chaos accordingly. Next up, we created some custom resources, the operator, which helps you pull in the chaos experiment and run it, the scheduler, which helps you schedule the chaos. So what is important is, of course, to schedule your chaos, understand where you can, when you can start your chaos experimentation, when you can end your chaos experimentation, and for how long you want to run your chaos. So all these things are important. And it was more of an individual specific thing, where an individual was able to run a particular experiment or a single experiment. And that was the initial journey of Litmus. But over the months, with understanding what can be done, the idea was to create chaos workflows. So a workflow or a chaos workflow is nothing but a suite of experiments, a number of experiments which are specific to your application, which help you identify a particular weakness, or which help you identify a particular chaos engineering game day, or a particular chaos engineering test suite, which is curated in series or parallel, because Litmus was integrated with Orgo, which is another CNCF project. It just graduated recently. So Argo CD, using Argo CD, you create your chaos workflows and you can run them in series or parallel. And then, of course, user management and tenancy. So that teaming, beg your pardon, user management and teaming, I think they were another important aspect, of course. So as we started off, the initial goal was of obviously focusing more on the individual side of things. But then post that, the idea was to get an enterprise aspect to it, or understand how folks are practicing, or the teams are practicing chaos. So now, I mean, teams can, it's not just one person who can practice chaos, but rather the whole team who are part of the different, I mean, there are different folks in different teams, right? Someone is part of the SRE team, someone is part of the QA team, or someone is just part of the developmental team. So thinking about these SLOs, or when, you know, an enterprise runs chaos, it's more important for a team to induce chaos in various aspects of the infrastructure. So that is why it became easier to, you know, manage and bring your teams in with the introduction of Chaos Center, which is the central chaos management center. It's a place where you can, I mean, I'll help you through a snapshot of it, but it's a place where you can manage your chaos, you can run your chaos experiments easily. It acts as a central resource center where you can induce them, schedule them, and create your private chaos hub. What is the private chaos hub? Where you create your own test suite, you pull in some experiments from the public hub, or you write your own experiments and add that to the private chaos hub. And obviously monitoring and observability. So the idea was the chaos center will help pull in Prometheus metrics, and these metrics can be observed in a Grafana dashboard, or any, let's say you're using a Dynatrace or a Datadog observability dashboard. So you can obviously observe what exactly is happening in your system, or where are your systems going down. And next up, we obviously, this feature was bought in 1.x, that was custom health checks. So you need to understand the resiliency of your system, how resilient your systems are, what are the health checks that it is passing, and that is what we called as probes. So probes were nothing but, I mean, they were custom health checks in form of HTTP probe or a Prometheus probe, which help users identify the resiliency score of the systems, how resilient the systems are, and then according to that, they help the people make their systems more resilient. And lastly, GitOps. I mean, GitOps is coming up in such a big way. Scalability is key, and the idea is to manage your workflows and use a Git form to basically take out the operations. So a GitOps integration was basically carried out to make things easier, to help folks manage their chaos engineering workflows easily. And that is what brought in 2.0. 2.0 basically brought in an observability experience to it, and also an easy experience where there's not a lot of YAML files or coding involved, but because, I mean, everyone is done with YAML files. Sometimes it seems like that in the community, but that is what the idea was. And that became the key with the UI, and helping induce chaos in a better way with the Orgo workflow specifically, which was mentioned by Victor, who's again part of the Crossplane community and made a video out of it as well. So moving on, the journey of Litmus, we talked about it, the advantages. Obviously, there is a chaos center, the UI, which helps you, additions of chaos agent, which help you run your chaos, or basically acts as an agent to run your chaos. You can curate your workflows according to specific scenarios. There's a chaos hub, which, I mean, the marketplace, bring your own chaos with the SDK. You manage your workflows with the GitOps, multi-tenancy, and observability and non-Kubernetes chaos. So all this became advantages about Litmus. And with 2.0, they have come in and they have helped. I mean, that is something which we see more from the project side of things, but this is how chaos engineering has advanced from the days of Chaos Monkey, where, you know, there were just a couple of experiments which were run into production to just identify the performance testing, or to just see how the system behave in production, to shifting the paradigm with so many projects coming in, and then with the community engagement that has helped a lot from each and every sector. So these are the core components. I think we covered a few. The chaos agent is basically the target cluster where the chaos could be injected via Litmus. The chaos center is the UI, which gives you the freedom to manage every single part of the system. And this is all about the chaos center, or, I mean, these are all the things that you can do with the chaos center. I'll try to cover a snapshot of the chaos center if we have it, and how you can manage your workflows. And multi-tenancy, of course, I mean, there's a namespace scope and a cluster scope
support which is provided, I mean, on the control plane, and I mean the portal. So there is an administrator, of course, which basically acts as the center point, but there are multiple users who are owners, editors, and viewers of the project. So you can create teams of multiple users. There is role-based access, so everyone has a different role, and that is how authentication takes place, which becomes a smooth process to even ensure security of your systems or your chaos practice or your chaos center where you're practicing chaos. Monitoring observability, I mean, these are again the aspects. You connect to a data source, you visualize the workflow runs, you compare your workflows, because there are various workflows you run and you have to devise a suit. So you need to understand how do these workflows compare, and then you upload your own dashboards and tune them accordingly. Lastly, GitOps for integrate in GitOps for chaos, I mean, integrates with Git, as we mentioned, and helps you track event and trigger chaos. It helps with the event tracker microservice, which is, I mean, automatically subscribed to the chaos workflows. And obviously GitOps tools like Argo CD, Flux, they help you manage your workflows accordingly. So we talked about the non-Kubernetes chaos. So I'm not gonna take time here. And then we have also given a feature comparison, what are the experiments and per user per cluster for the individuals who are part of Fun.x. But with 2.0, the idea was to bring in multi-tenancy, chaos workflows, per organization, a CLI and a GUI, scalability, and lastly, integrated and interleaved monitoring. So what is the future roadmap? I mean, this is very important. The idea is obviously to focus on chaos engineering for databases. There needs to be increased support for non-Kubernetes chaos, because that is a section which needs to be, more and more understand the black hole attacks, the attacks on non-Kubernetes platforms, bare metals, physical devices, because companies are yet to shift to the Kubernetes world or the cloud native world completely. And if you have to adopt chaos, then today is the time, and why wait to change your systems, or why wait for your roadmap to change? And obviously additional probes, diversifying them, identifying, basically diversifying the steady state hypothesis validation, and then wearing those real world events, improving the SDK so that you can write experiments, contribute to the project, contribute experiments, and then improving observability, because as we mentioned, chaos and observability are two things which are gonna give value, or which are gonna provide value to the resiliency of the systems. So last up, how you can contribute. We welcome contributions of all kinds. I mean, good first issues are the best to take. Developmental features, or I mean, bug fixes, feature enhancements, documentation, even the README or bug fixes can be done. And these are the few highlighted repos that you can take a look at: the chaos charts, the workflows, the Litmus Go, and the Litmus Chaos website, of course. And these are a few links. If possible, I can share them with you: the code, the documentation, the version 1 docs for One.x. And please join us in the Litmus community. It's part of the Kubernetes Slack, slack.kts.io. And then you can join the Litmus channel. So thanks for being there. I mean, try out Litmus today. Here are the docs. And thanks a lot to all the organizers and everyone for organizing this beautiful event and this beautiful talk.